Jane McKenzie and welcome back to my YouTube channel. In today's video I'm going to be talking about my anxiety and depression. I have some notes here, so I might be looking down just to see, just to guide me a little bit about what I'm going to be talking about in this video. I've shared here and there, sorry, it's a bit like that today. I've shared here and there a bit on my Instagram with family and friends and people who know me that I do have anxiety and depression, ADHD, dyslexia, and I'm definitely very much so neurodivergent. And I think it's very important to share your story, so that's why I've come on here to YouTube to in my channel to share a bit more and for you guys to get to know me. I know I talk about it on my Instagram and about ADHD and my neurodivergency, but I would like to share a bit more about how I was diagnosed in more of a long form content here on YouTube. I remember being young and thinking something might be wrong, but I never kind of knew what was going on. I didn't understand what was going on in my head. And I was kind of that crazy child who was just sort of all over the place, typical ADHD. We didn't know, my parents didn't know back then. But I want to give a disclaimer that my parents that's their first time parenting. Well, I have one older sister called Anna, and she's only a year and a bit older than me, but it's their first time parenting, and like anybody becoming parents, and they did the best that they could at the time with the knowledge that they knew and their understanding. But back then in 2004 when I was born, 2005, 2006, 2007, when they started to notice things, the understanding of a neurodivergent condition wasn't as much as nowadays, and especially for women get misdiagnosed, or women fly under the radar from masking. So they were doing the best that they could at the time, and they have been amazing parents to me. But this is just my experience and how we as a family coped and understood and came to the conclusion that I needed some extra help and seeking all those different things. So I kind of started from birth. I always had eating and feeding issues. My parents had to wrap me in a towel to get me to eat. I lost a lot of weight very quickly after birth, but then regained it. And my parents thought I was a normal child. I was slow to talking and walking. My parents didn't really notice that, and they didn't really pick up on that until later on in life. But it wasn't until my mum was walking along the road with me and looked down and saw that my eye was crossed. And sometimes when you have a neurodivergent condition, you can inherit other things, or other conditions are more common to collect and have. So when my mum looked down, she was like, oh my goodness, my eye is all over the place, what's going on? And she freaked out, and so she phoned one of our relatives, and she said, take her up to the eye specialist and see what's going on. My parents did that, and they rushed me in, as new parents do, thinking it was the end of the world, and hey presto, I had to have surgery. And so I had surgery for a lazy eye at the age of 2. To help strengthen the muscles, and I also had an eye patch on, and I had all the treatments, all the things, eye drops and all sorts of stuff. I have glasses. I've had glasses since the age of 2. I remember my first pair of glasses, they were blue. I think my dad picked those out for me, and all was fine. I started school. I remember the first day of school. I always hated school. I didn't like school. Yeah, I was going along, all was fine. I remember as a child I was very energetic, and I was very emotionally all over the place, and people around me noticed that something was wrong, something was not quite right, because I still had feeding issues. My mum had to put me in the bath to get me to eat. The only thing I would eat for a while was yogurt pots. I forever hate them now. But hey, that got me through the time. I remember sleeping was always a big issue for me. I never could fall asleep quickly. I would always lie awake for hours, and I would always be very overstimulated and wide awake. I never wanted to go to sleep, and I was always a kid that was very anxious. I noticed I struggled with anxiety, I struggled with depression, but we didn't know that it was that. I would just get really upset, emotionally unregulated, and end up in my parents' bed, and that cycle was going on for quite a while. And it wasn't later on until I was in year 5. Year 5, I would have been aged 9 or 10, around about that age, that one of my school teachers said to me, something's going wrong, not quite right. She's not learning correctly, she's not keeping up with the class. And I was just in a public school, so something's not quite right, and I don't think they had the funds at the school to deal with that and cope with me. So my parents actually pulled me out of that school, the local public school, and sent me to a private school. And at that private school, the school noticed that I was quite far behind and things were not going quite right in the class, and I wasn't acting quite normal and I wasn't keeping up with the learning. So they sent me off, and I got some testing done learning wise, and they diagnosed me with dyslexia and dyscalculia. Dyslexia is reading and writing, and then dyscalculia is maths. For me, maths is a whole different ball game. Don't get me to do maths, and reading and writing I was severely behind. And my parents always knew that I was behind in reading and writing. And around about that time, my mum was talking to a friend called Jennifer, and she said to send Jane to an occupational therapist. Here's the name of the occupational therapist, send her. So my mum did, because her daughter has a whole bunch of neurodivergent conditions, and she had a little bit more understanding. So my mum rushed me to the occupational therapist, and I got so much help with reading, writing, my motor skills and things like that. And then that person unfortunately left to have a baby, which is fine, we all do different things in our lives, and she wanted to have a baby, congrats to her, and she referred me to someone else called Carolyn. And Carolyn was a godsend. She was amazing. She was so good at that time in my life. She had me in all sorts of things. She had me doing what do you call it, sort of exposure therapy, and she had me in a group on a Saturday, and she would help me learn how to order things at the counter. She would put me in scenarios that were hard, like I remember I had to do heights, and I had to stand in mud because that texture was hard for me, and all these textural things that they were treating me for. But I finished middle school, and I finished at that private school, and I finished up at Carolyn's, which was really sad. That was hard for me, and I went on to high school. And going into high school was really hard. I mean, I got bullied. I hated high school. My parents just sent me to the local public school because they didn't want to spend any more money on private school for me for high school. I would have hated it anyway. So I just said to them, I want to go to the local public school and just sit it out as you have to. And I hated it. I got bullied. I didn't like it. I didn't have very many friends. I was at the bottom. I was in the bottom stream. I wasn't doing very well, really, and I left at 16. I decided I just wanted to leave, so one day I just left at 16, and which is year 11, and I signed up to do hairdressing and makeup at the local school. And so I went off and I studied level 3 in hairdressing and level 3 in makeup for the next 2 years, and I absolutely loved it. I loved it, but that finished up, and so I moved into hospitality. I loved doing that at the time. I loved it. I worked for a Christian couple on their ice cream, on their land. They had an ice cream stand, so I did that for a long time. I became manager for over the summer, but that was only over the summer, but during the year I worked in a cafe, and that one shut down and I moved to another cafe, and that cafe was called Bayside, and that at the local area that I was living in at the time, and I wasn't meeting the last 1% of that job. I wasn't doing well. I felt really anxious, so I went to my uncle and I said, look, I'm feeling like this, and he was able to help me because he's had anxiety and depression in his past. This is my uncle on my dad's side, and he gave me some little gummies, Remedy Rescue, and they were a godsend at the time. I was able to keep going at that job, but that job wasn't good for me. The manager wasn't very good. It was a very high stress. I think that business wasn't doing very well, but in the end they ended up letting me go because I wasn't meeting that last 1% of the job. But the lady said to me, this is how I was when I was first diagnosed with ADHD, and I didn't want to know that. Typical, one of the symptoms of having ADHD is you don't want to know that you have it. So I just went off. I was in a rage. I did not know that I wanted to have ADHD. I was like, no, I don't have it. I was adamant. But it took me, in the next 2 weeks, I seriously thought about it. And I realized the ways that I've been struggling in my life through high school and through friendship losses and through things like that. And that really made me upset. So I went into my parents' room. I picked the right time, just as they were ready, sitting up in bed, reading, and I said to them, I think I'm really struggling. I do think I have ADHD. I really need some help. And my mum didn't want to know that I had it really either. I think she was quite shocked and upset because her daughter's been struggling. So she went back to Jennifer, and Jennifer was really good to her. Jennifer was able to say that she's been observing some things in me as well ever since a baby, and she was able to say to my mum, it's just a chemical imbalance in my brain. And for my mum to hear that, that was absolutely amazing. That was one of the best things, because that changed her point of view. And she came back to me and she said, look, let's make a doctor's appointment. So we went and made an appointment, and got a referral, and a couple of months later we were in the psychiatrist's office, and I was diagnosed with ADHD and autism. Autism was a little bit of a shock, but they do relate together to each other, so it's understandable now since I've learned to know so much about these conditions. And I was put on some ADHD medication, but I lost a lot of weight, so with the stimulants it can lower your appetite, so my parents took me off that, and later on we made some decisions as a family and we moved across to Australia. Now this has been the best decision of our lives because while living here, I moved into this beautiful apartment. I've made some amazing friends, but my experience of it didn't stop there with the neurodivergency. Back in the beginning of 2024, I had a job in an early childhood centre, and I couldn't hold down that job. I kept getting really sick, and we kind of didn't know why and what was going on. And I was in up. I was experiencing panic attacks, but I didn't know exactly what they were, and there wasn't a name to them. And so my mum was in and out of hospital quite a lot with me. She was there, she was holding my sick bag, like she was amazing. My mum was so good to me. My dad was flying back and forth to New Zealand for work, the way this work was, and so that was quite hard. But I was experiencing it where I would look at food and I didn't feel hungry. I was so anxious. My anxiety was through the roof, and I was losing quite a lot of weight quite quickly. And so my parents wanted a trip, had paid for a trip to go down to Sydney, and actually I ended up in the hospital in Sydney with all these symptoms and things. So when we came back from Sydney, the nurse in Sydney hospital said to my mum and dad, especially my dad, get Jane into the GP, send her to her local GP. So my dad and my sister basically they came with me and forced me into the local GP's office. His name was Josh. He was amazing to me. He put me on Valium, and that was a majorly strong anxiety medication, and it wasn't until then that I really got some relief from a month of just being weak and just feeling like my anxiety was through the roof and losing so much weight. He put me on the scales and I had lost 20 kgs. It was not good. I had gone from 57 kgs to 32 kgs. It wasn't good. And I was almost anorexic. It was pretty bad. I was tiny. And he referred me to the local psychiatrist, where I was able to get a diagnosis of ADHD, autism, and generalized anxiety. Now this psychiatrist gave me a diagnosis of autism, and said my autism was at level 2, which means I need a bit more help in life, but I'm still high functioning, which was a shock, but also a relief. It was such a relief to have these names, to know what I was going through, to have the understanding, and I was able to go away and get this help. I was able to gain the weight back again. I was on shakes and protein and shakes and all sorts of different things, but this gave me an understanding of what I was going through, what I was experiencing as a child, the things that I had experienced, why I was so small, why I had all these feeding issues as a baby, and all these different things. I was able to get an answer, and it was an answer to prayer. I mean, I struggled for so long in the workplace, and friendships and bullying, and not holding down friends, and I've been able, on this medication that I'm on now, she changed me from the Valium, put me on other medication, and this medication has gained my weight. I'm able to make friends, I'm able to hold down friendships, I'm able to hold down a job, I'm able to live in society along with everybody else, which is amazing. But the reason I've come to you guys and to Instagram and social media and YouTube to share my story is maybe somebody else has gone through a similar experience where they've experienced anxiety, where they've looked at meals and gone, I can't eat this, I don't know what to do, I don't know why I'm feeling this gut feeling in my stomach, what do I do? And I've also experienced panic attacks, so I have panic attack medication as well, and that's amazing. But my story doesn't end here. I will always probably struggle with anxiety and depression, but I have an answer. I'm on medication now and it's subsided a lot, but who's to know what happens in the future? I mean, God, I'm heavily religious, and God has a plan for me. I don't know, my plan is ups and downs in life, and that's like everything, but I hope that my story has been able to help somebody else, and I hope that my story has been able to relate to other people, and I've been able to share my story in a way of, this is what I've been going through, and I hope somebody else has been able to get an understanding and experience from what I've been experiencing. And Daisy's been here for me through it all. I mean, she's been amazing. She's been so good to me. She's been my bestest of friend. I got her in the lowest of lows. When I got Daisy, she really picked me up for a while I had really bad anxiety and depression. But it wasn't coming to Australia until I really learned what was going on and really sunk to my lowest and got some help. But I hope this has been able to help other people and just been able to share my experience. It's been amazing. I really do love you guys. I thank you for following along and following my experience and hearing my anxiety and depression story, or my neurodivergent sort of story and understanding of how I came to get a diagnosis, and I really do hope that has helped you guys. And thank you so much for following along on my videos. It means the whole entire world to me. And me and Daisy will say goodbye. We'll say goodbye, won't we, Daisy? We'll say goodbye, and we'll see you in the next video, guys. And I hope you follow along. Click down below for subscribe and follow along, and click the thumbs up button. That would mean the world to me. Follow along, and I'll see you in the next video next week, guys. Bye.